Johannes. Yvonne, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Morgozata. I will start today. I will start to explain you a little bit more about what 100 weeks exactly is. And then we will tell you more about how we use Nebu to collect our data. And then Johannes will continue and he will explain you how we use Nebu also to in the end, analyze our data. So 100 weeks, what is 100 weeks? 100 weeks is, as the tagline already says, it's temporary cash for permanent change. So the idea is that we send money directly to people living in poverty. The idea is that the people themselves know best what they need. So instead of us deciding them for them, that they need food or any goods, let them decide themselves because they know what they need. So, and the thing that makes it possible to send the money directly to the people living in poverty are mobile phones. Nowadays, even people living in the most remote areas have access to a mobile phone. And the thing that makes mobile phones useful for us is a technology, it's called mobile money. Mobile money is a technology that allows you to send and to save and to receive money on your mobile phone. So it's like a bank account, but then on the mobile phone. So what we exactly do, we receive money from donors living at the moment, mainly the Netherlands. We receive that money and we send this money to the mobile money service provider. And that mobile money service provider, for example, it's Tigo Cash, as you see here the parasols from. The Tigo Cash sends it to the women in our program, so the women living in poverty. The women receive a text message with a code in it, and with this text message they go to a mobile money agent, as you see here on the photo. They show the code and they can receive the amount of money and they can get cash in their hand. On this photo you see, this is our first woman, Jacqueline. This photo is made in 2015. It's the first woman ever receiving money from 100 weeks. And this is also the first moment she got money out. So I think you can see here the man, the mobile money agent giving her cash, which is like a really happy moment for her, of course, because she just gets cash without like really without any conditions, so she can spend it in whatever way she wants. So as you can see, she's really smiling. So basically what we do, we connect people living here with people living in extreme poverty. We allow them to send money via mobile cash. It means that for every 10 euros someone gives us in Netherlands, we can send 8 euros to a woman living in poverty. These 8 euros is on a weekly basis. So the women living in poverty get 8 euros. Every Monday morning they get a text message that they can have 8 euros on their mobile phone, and they receive this amount for 100 weeks, as our title is, of course. This 8 euros is about like a doubling of their normal weekly income. So that's really, yeah, really a big amount for them. As you have, I think, already seen before, and you see here as well, we only support women. This is because literature shows that women can like spend their money more sustainable than men do. So many women have a family, and they tend to think twice before they spend it to something bigger. They think also about the children, about the sustainable well-being of their family. Another reason that we only support women is because we want to empower the women as well, because most of the time, of course, men are more empowered. So that was the core of our program, is sending direct cash to women living in poverty. But another thing we do is that we also provide a weekly training. Every week, the women come together in small groups of about 20 women, and they get a financial training. So you can see here, they keep track of a diary, so they learn, so they get some financial literacy, so they learn where do they spend their money on, and which money comes in and which money comes out every week. Besides this training, as I said, it's in groups of about 20 women. They also gain in social capital, basically. So they get to know, they can make new friends in the group. They talk about more than just the financial diaries. They also have some social contact. This makes them feel stronger as well. Also because other members from the group can give them some advice on how they did spend their money, or what's a good idea or what's not. It's really good for their mental well-being. So this is our desired end state, basically. What we, after these 100 weeks of weekly donations and the trainings the women get, our goal is to get them sustainable out of poverty. So it would be great if they have invested in something that can can assure them that they can generate their own money after the 100 weeks finished. So here you see, for example, a woman, she makes her own clothes. She has a weaving machine. This is another photo of a woman. She bought a plot of land so she can make her own beans on her field and sell them on the markets. And this, for example, is another photo of a woman that bought a sewing machine so she can repair clothes of people in her neighborhood and earn some money with that. So that's our program, and that's the outcome we want to have. But then the question is, how do we expect that we will get to this outcome? With that in mind, we've created a theory of change. In our theory of change, I will put us aside again. Our theory of change basically explains the pathway to how women get sustainable out of poverty. So the first step that we see happening is that the women first covering their basic needs. So if they have like a doubling of their weekly income, you see first thing they eat more. It makes sense, because if you're hungry every day, at the start they only eat about 1 meal a day. You just start buying food for you and your family, of course. Also, a thing we see happening at the beginning is they send their children to school. So because now they have money to pay for the school fees and to get books for the children. After they've covered their basic needs, we see that the women invest in assets. So they are going to start thinking, oh, how can I generate more money myself? Where can I invest in? So you see them repair their houses, for example, or investing in livestock, so that they can produce goods as well. After they cover their basic needs and also invest in assets, you see that the women feel more empowered, because they like the food that gives them the space in their head to think about things in their lives, and this makes happen that they invest in assets, and this all together they just feel more strong. And you can see that, for example, they do sleep better and they feel just more secure about themselves and more ready for the future. So this will last 100 weeks, and after that we see that they will be out of poverty and also stay out of poverty as well. So the next thing, now comes Nebu. Of course, because we've set up a theory of change, but we also want to see whether this theory of change is really true in the field. Like, we can make up all these things here, like how do we expect things to do and people to behave, but of course we don't know it, and we have to test this as well. So to test this, we use Nebu. We've set up a comprehensive monitoring and evaluation system, and via this system we gather information about how the women are doing. we have set up a big questionnaire, which I will tell you more about in a minute. And with this questionnaire, we go into the field and ask the women how they are doing. And for this questionnaire, we use Nebu. We use Nebu basically for these three things. So to collect data, I will tell you more about the data collection. Then we also use Nebu to manage our data and also to utilize our data. And my colleague Johannes will tell you more about that. So I'll just go to the first step. The data collection is just first a few pictures also to get a feeling about how we collect the data. When the women start in our program, so like before they receive the money, we conduct a baseline questionnaire. A baseline questionnaire is our complete, like it's a relatively big questionnaire. It takes about an hour to conduct. So we really get to know the women that we support. Our baseline is therefore conducted face-to-face. Our team in the field, you can see here on the left, it's our country manager in Rwanda. It's Fabrice. He will go visit the women and ask them some questions about their life. For example, as you see here on the right screen, does every member of the household have at least 2 sets of clothes? Yeah, he asked the questions on the tablet where he has the Nebu app, and he insert them, and we can receive them here in the Netherlands. Then after the baseline is conducted, the women start their 100 weeks. And during their 100 weeks, we also want to measure how they're doing, how they feel, on what they spend their money, and all these kinds of things. We ask these questions via our call center. We decided to not go there to see them face to face, because this takes a lot of time of us, but more important also for the women. We don't want to interrupt them in their daily activities, as they are quite busy with taking care of their family and providing a livelihood for themselves. So we've set up a call center. Here you see 2 photos of our call center. And this is our team of students from the local university, and they call the women and ask them questions. Another photo of our team of students who conducts our questionnaires. They were really excited to work with us and to also do something good for their community. So it's a nice. So this is, I just want to, I think I can, I want to show you in an Excel file. Is it, I think everyone sees it, yeah, okay. So this is an overview of our questionnaire. Here on column C, this is all questions we ask. It's quite long list, so this is the end. As I said, during the baseline, we ask all these questions to get a complete overview of how the woman is doing and how she feels. And then during the calling rounds, during the phone calls, we only ask a subset of the baseline. This is to make the call not too long, and also, yeah, to make it more that we can handle it better. And in this overview, you can see when we ask which question. So for example, we have here the question, are you covered by any kind of health insurance? You can see we ask it in the baseline, then we ask this in round 1, round 3, and round 5. In total, we have 7 calling rounds. It's about every other month we call the women, and then round 8 it's an end line, so that's the end picture, and we ask every question again. So here I can just quickly show you some example, because as I said, the calling rounds is a subset of questions from the baseline, and the timing of this question is based on our theory of change. So, for example, we expect that people in the beginning, as I said, they start eating more straight away. So we have here the question, how many meals do you normally have per day? We ask in the baseline and then immediately in round 1 as well, because it's something we expect to see improve straight away. But then there's also another question, for example, the assets, whether they invested in assets. This is, here you have a list of all the assets. That's something like we do not expect to invest in the first week. So that's why we wait a few rounds with asking these questions, and we start asking it in round 3. Now, yeah, based on this is really the basis of our monitoring and evaluation system. I go back to the slideshow. And this is also where we use Nebu. We have put all the questions that we showed you in the Excel file. We put it into DubQuest. Also we, how do you say, we make it as easy as possible for our team, for our call center to go through the questionnaires. For example, this is a print screen about education. We first have a question, did you ever attend school? And if the question is answered with yes, we ask the questions, what is the highest level of school you have attended, and what is the highest level of school you've ever completed? So with these conditions really help us to not spend too much time in asking questions where we could already know the answer to. Then the other thing which Nebu DubQuest has, which is very useful for us, is that we can we can put all the women into like for every woman we create one project in DubQuest, and then we make a condition, and in that condition we show which moment, like in that condition, shows at which moment we ask which question. So for example, there's a question here, like you've seen this question now before, during the last week, how many meals did you normally have per day? We asked this question in round 1, round 3, round 5, and round 7, but not on round 2 and round 4. So we added the conditions that it's only visible when these rounds are, when it's these rounds. And
so that helps interviewers, right? So interviewers, they just get the right questionnaire at the right time for the right round of group of women, right? It's like a variable you've created, custom variable, right?
That's it. Yeah, to be more clear. So this is the first thing we did, is we add the women to our sample management, and we created a variable called round. So then we know when we call the women which round she is in. And based on this variable, we set the conditions, and DubQuest knows whether he should show the question or not. So this makes it easy for us to handle, because that makes that we can only need one project for one woman instead of having 8 different projects, because we call them several times.
For one group, you mean?
For one group.
Project for each group.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And I just want to mention for people who are new to Nebu tools, that what you see right here, this is the scripting environment. So this is something that only people that prepare the questionnaire, the logic sees, and there is a different interface, much more simpler for the interviewers.
Yeah. Exactly, great. I'm very much used to having this screen straight away, but as Margosata added, then you know the context. So that's how we do the creating the conditions to the.
Maybe just one thing, if I may add, and this also allows us, the system really allows us to script the questionnaire and make it changes, if necessary, to the questionnaire on our side, and then push it into the tablets that are, you know, sitting in Rwanda, in Ghana, and Uganda. And once they are synced there, they'll have the new questionnaires on the tablet in the app, or they'll have it on their screen when they do the phone interviews. So in that sense, we've kind of separated the back end from the front end, being able to do a lot of that, back end data work here in the Netherlands, because that's at the moment where the data team is, whereas the data gathering team obviously is in the countries themselves.
Yeah, exactly. It's as Johannes said, we separated the back end from the front end, but Nebu allows us to keep this really close, even though we're physically so far away from each other. We have short lines via this, and all changes we do here, they happen immediately in Rwanda as well. So that's just great. Another thing we use as well is it makes it easy for us that we don't need so much projects as we do interviews, because we can create some selection criteria. So for example, at the beginning, when an interview starts, you select the country in which you're conducting the questionnaire. At the moment, we're mainly active in Rwanda, Ghana, and Uganda. And based on the answer you give here, some questions you can see and other questions you can't see. And especially it's also about some answer possibilities. For example, religion. You have different religions in all these countries, and the religions that are more common in Ghana don't have to be visible for our Rwanda interviewers. Also for them, we wanted to make it as easy as possible. And to add to that as well, we have a variable here where you can choose the language. So this language option, this makes it possible that you can choose the language you want based on the country where you're conducting the interview. So it also gives us a lot of options to work with it, which is great.
And this is also, of course, from a data analysis point, it's really important that we keep the questionnaires as consistent as possible across countries, so that we can end up comparing, but at the same time, as Yvonne said, allow for these kind of local modifications, and especially allow for different languages, so the surveys can be conducted in 3 different languages, but at the end of the day we'll still get data that is comparable and allows us to make, you know, cross-country comparisons.
Yeah,
which is extremely useful, and which we couldn't have done before partnering with Nebu.
Yeah.
May I ask a question? Do I understand correctly that then for the entire project you have one questionnaire, and there are sets of rules, sets of different variables that allows you to pick the right questions at the right time, fetch to the right interviewer, but there is just one big questionnaire.
So our women start in groups of 20. So when we have enough money to support 20 women, they start the 100 weeks. And these groups, we also all these groups are in there's one group per project, and then the questions. So based on the moment in the 100 weeks they are, for example, they're at round 3. Based on that, the questions we want to ask are active based on the conditions I just showed you.
And this will also become more clear in my part, I think, where I actually show the different projects, or how it's kind of structured on a project level in DAPQuest.
Yeah, exactly. Johannes will show it from this is more like in depth, and Johannes will show you more of an overview of what we do. Now, and that then I can immediately give the floor to Johannes. So I just explained you how we collected the data, and Johannes will tell you more about the management and using it.
Yes. So, Yvonne, if you can
stop share
your screen.
Yeah.
Johannes, can you take your microphone a little, maybe?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Is this better?
Yes, much better.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Now, I'm hoping you can see my screen there.
Yes.
You
Yes,
can.
excellent. So, as Yvonne has said, I'm kind of picking up where she has ended, kind of where the collection part comes in. So, as Yvonne has said, we have in the countries where we work, we have set up call centers that are specifically set up for gathering data for 100 weeks. So when we say call centers, you shouldn't think of kind of a huge room with 200 people working there full time, but we like to think of them as kind of pop-up call centers that we put to use when we need them. As Yvonne has said, about every 2 months, all of these groups are being called. But what you see here in the picture, this is Rwanda, where most of the 100 weeks activity is at the moment. So there we have a pretty permanent space, or very permanent space, and we have these actual phone booths, and it actually looks like a call center with, I think, 5 or 6 workstations.
Yeah, that looks very professional.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So this is all thanks to the Rwandan team who has find people to build this and to make this, and for relatively low costs. And we should, like, when we're giving this talk, of course we're showing all the things that we're doing on the back end, but you should always keep in your head that the actual work on the ground, the interviewing, the solving problems, speaking to the women, all of that is actually done by the local team, obviously. So these are Rwandans, these are Ghanese, these are people from Uganda, who do the work in the field, obviously. And this includes our interviewers who are students of the here you see students of Ines University, which is a university in northern Rwanda, close to the Ugandan border, where many of the 100 Weeks women live. They conduct the interviews. You see here the phone interview operation. So these are the CATI surveys, right? Those of you who are kind of in that whole world of market research and surveying are familiar with that terminology. CATI, computer-assisted telephone interviewing. But as Yvonne has also said, there's actually also a moment where we speak to the women face to face. So when the women are onboarded, when they start the program in groups of 20, these interviewers, these same people that you see here, they actually go to these women's homes and they sit with them and they go through this very extended baseline interview that covers all the domains that we're interested in. These are interviews of about 40-45 minutes, and they're conducted face to face with the Nebu app. So already here you can see we have 2 different modes of data collection that we are using, the face-to-face CAPI surveys, computer-assisted personal interview, and then the phone CATI surveys. There was a moment when 100 Weeks was kind of growing and growing about 2 years ago, and more groups were being added, and gathering data through these different modes and kind of keeping track of all those data was getting very difficult because we've been working with like very simple apps to gather data, survey apps, and then I started looking around for more professional solutions, and then quite quickly I stumbled upon Nebu, and I looked at what they are offering, what the products are they're offering, and even though they're typically used in very different contexts, I kind of thought, actually, this is exactly what we need. And then, before I knew it, I was sitting at the Nebu office the day later, actually, discussing a possible partnership. And I can't stress this enough, how happy we are that this has worked. And it continues to work. Because again, this is quite a lot of data gathered through different modes, and we need to keep track of it. We are not a huge commercial organization. We need to kind of streamline it as much as possible and keep it scalable as much as possible, because 100 Weeks is growing, and we needed a solution that really makes it scalable.
It was a beautiful day when you joined us.
It was a good day. Yeah.
Yeah, good day. Johannes, we have a question from an
Please.
attendee. Are the face-to-face and CATI data sets one, or are they separate data sets?
Thank you so much for this question. That is what I have here. So these data are being well, they feed into Nebu DubQuest projects through Dub Interviewer, and actually they're separate projects. So because it's different modes of data collection, we need to have them in separate projects. So the way we've structured this is we have one baseline project, so which creates one baseline data set, which is CAPI. These are the personal interviews. They are being run on the app. All our women that have ever been onboarded into 100 weeks have their baseline data in that project. So that project is just a project that can be opened on the app right away, and then you can start populating it with the data of a new woman. That's the face-to-face baseline. And then for the follow-up rounds, so these are the CATI surveys through the phone, each group has a separate project. And this means, as Yvonne has just shown, that we have, for each of these groups, we have one big project with all the questions in there, which is basically almost a copy of the baseline, but then there are routing conditions in there that allow us to say, okay, now we're calling group 3 round 5, and then actually only those questions for group 5 that we specified will appear on the interviewer's screen. So this also makes it possible for us to keep things scalable, because at the end of the day, what we only need to do when we add a new group is we add one new CATI project, which is basically a copy of any of the others with a new group, and then we can just keep on going. So this also means that if you kind of visualize this, we have a group 10 and we have one CATI project for group 10, then each round that we're doing with group 10 adds data to that project. So it adds data in, if you think of it in terms of a data matrix, it adds new rows to our data matrix, but in different columns, because we're not asking exactly the same questions each time, but as Yvonne has just shown the overview, we're asking certain questions more frequently, certain questions more in the beginning, some others more in the end. So in that sense, kind of, yeah, that data set keeps on growing throughout the duration of the program. I hope I've answered the question. So where are we? Yeah. Okay. And here again, you can see we need a system for this that is pretty advanced to manage these data and to not have, Yvonne and my half of our time being taken up by organizing this. So that's really useful. Here again, as a reminder, we use the same project per group throughout the 100 weeks with these routing elements, and we have one baseline project that's for everyone. I hope this has become clear. If it's still unclear and you still have questions, don't hesitate to throw us a chat message if we have time later, or even email us later on. We're very happy to answer questions, engage in conversations. So at this point in the data flow, you can you see that we have all our data in Nebu, which is great. But at the end of the day, what we really need is one data set that includes all of our evaluation and monitoring data. Because at the end of the day, the very end point of my talk as well is our dashboard, which we are building in Tableau, that some of you might be familiar with. But for Tableau, for that dashboard environment Tableau to function well, we really need one merged data set that includes everything. And for that, we turn to the data hub, the Nebu data hub that some of you might be familiar with, some of you might not be. If you're not, you should check it out. Basically, what this allows us to do is to have a scripted a scheduled script, an R script written in R, which does many different things, but maybe the most important thing it does is it pulls into the script all these different projects, all these different CAPI and CATI projects, loads them into the data hub, so we have them there. And it also, and that's a really nice thing, it also allows us to load data into the data hub that's not in, that was not gathered through Dub Interviewer, not in DubQuest, but actually an external data file. Because as I just said before, we started 100 Weeks without Nebu. So we started 100 Weeks gathering data with other tools. So by the time I was sitting at Nebu's offices and we were discussing, you know, how we can do this together, we had already gathered quite a substantial amount of data. That data doesn't sit in Nebu, but well, elsewhere. So what the data hub allows us is to create a data set. We're using CSV just because it's nice and easy. And that CSV that lives in the data hub, in the data storage part of the data hub, and just sits there. It's a static file, doesn't do anything. But in this script of the data hub, the R script, that can be loaded into the script, so that at that point we really have all the data that was gathered ever within Nebu and before Nebu. And then all of that can be merged and is merged automatically in one single long format data set. So long format basically just meaning that every row is a observation, not a woman, but an observation. So basically, while we continue to grow and we continue to conduct new interviews, this data set is getting longer and longer and longer. It doesn't get wider because the set of questions stay the same, but it gets longer and longer. So basically, these different blocks that you see here, the baseline and group 1, 2, 3, and so forth, they're kind of placed underneath each other. That's why we call this a long format data set. We also do a couple of other things in this R script. For example, an important one for us is that we're replacing values with labels, meaning that if you just export the data as values, as you might be aware of, then you just get the number. So where 1 might represent no and 2 might represent yes, but you actually only get the 1 and the 2. If you export it directly from DubQuest, you have that option to say, give me the value labels rather than just the values. But in the data hub, you kind of need to import this metadata separately, and then you need to merge it. And that means that at the end of the day, we have a data set that actually has the labels in there that are really the answer, the answer properties. And that's, for us, that's really useful, and it minimizes the chance of making any mistakes there. As I mentioned before, we have different languages, right? So these data are being gathered in 4 different languages, actually. But the way we do this here is we are using the English data label. So the data set we're getting is always with English data labels, even though that specific data point might have been gathered in a different language, in Kinyarwanda or in Twi or in one of the other local languages. We also do some data cleaning there, or the script is actually doing some data cleaning there, doing solving some consistency problems of the data coming in. And again, this is automatically scheduled and it's just running every night, actually, to create one big data set. We also remove test interviews. We included this opportunity to just quickly test things and run through the interview, and that's just for us. We don't want that data to end up in our data set in the end. And also, which is really nice, we can actually depersonalize our data at that point already. So before the data kind of leaves the Nebu environment, we are able to anonymize the data, which of course, is necessary for us to meet kind of basic data privacy and data protection regulations. Because the last thing that we want is these data of these women, which in part is quite sensible data about their income and their savings and their well-being, to these data to end up on the street, or people accessing it that shouldn't be accessing it. So yeah, in that sense, that's really nice that for the visualizations, we don't need this personal information, so we can actually depersonalize it at that point already. And then what we just move this to the side a bit. Then after all of this has happened, so after all these data sets are kind of pulled into the data hub, they're merged, they're cleaned, they're depersonalized. Then that data set is made available through an API to Tableau for our data dashboard. The data dashboard is something that yeah, we've been developing for the last couple of months, and we now have a kind of our first fully functioning and operational dashboard, and we're very happy about that. The basic idea, I'll show the dashboard a bit more in a minute, but the basic idea here is that we're gathering a lot of data. A lot of that is relatively complex data, and we really realized, Yvonne and me, at some point, we realized that how important it is that everyone in the organization and also all the partners of 100 Weeks actually have an intuitive access to these data, so that it's not just Yvonne and me who are kind of the data nerds within 100 Weeks to extract these data, to write a report, to make a presentation. That's all well, but ideally what you want is kind of to feed this information, to feed into the everyday operations of 100 Week in a much more kind of natural manner, without us as gatekeepers in between. So therefore, we now have a dashboard that is very intuitive, very simple, usable for anyone within 100 Weeks and the partners, without having to be kind of a data enthusiast. Let me just show what the data dashboard looks like at the moment. So, all right. So at the moment, the dashboard is for internal use, as I said. In the future, it might be that also donors have access to a version of this dashboard. We'll still have to figure this out. But just to give you a sense how we use this internally, you see up here we have 3 different sections really. This the baseline data, the time series data, and then an admin section, which is mostly for Yvonne and me. The baseline data gives you an overview of some very basic demographic of all of our women. I don't know if you can read it here, but these are actually all of our groups. These 5 groups are the Ghana activities, and then these are all Rwanda, and there's Uganda, which has just started. These are now the ages of the women. So right off the bat, for example, we see that in Ghana, the women tend to be older than they are in Rwanda, which has a technical and logistical reason. Don't need to go into that. Also, do they live with their husbands? And you also see kind of distribution here. We see primary school completion rates. We see literacy rates, things like that. It's an interactive dashboard. So it's not just these graphs here, but you can actually then say, okay, I'm actually interested in health and mental resilience. And then you get a set of graphs that kind of are basic indicators for health and mental resilience, including the health insurance question that Yvonne mentioned before. Also, because we see here what the dashboard is doing now, it's really pulling in all the data from the data hub, everything. But it might be that you're actually only interested in certain groups. So you can say, okay, I'm only interested in those 4 groups in Rwanda, and you hit apply, and then you get the graphs only for those groups. That really allows you to focus on these. Also, we have the opportunity to do country level comparisons. For this, I need to select all the groups again. So we can actually compare the three countries on a country level with each other on all these. As you can see, there's a lot to play with, a lot of things to do, but that should give you a rough idea of what it is that we're doing. Another thing, and maybe even the more important thing, is of course the time series data, how things happen across time, change across time. As Yvonne has shown, we have a whole set of different indicators that we're using to track the women's progress. And here you see a list of possible indicators. This list is not complete yet, but this is the list we have for now. And one of the indicators that we're using is how happy the women are feeling. Very simple happiness question, but we see that this works actually quite well. You can ask all kinds of questions about well-being, but at the end of the day, asking, considering everything, how happy do you feel, or indeed actually in the last 7 days, did you feel happy considering everything? That's the question. That actually works relatively well, and it's relatively cultural independent, like not cultural specific, context specific, which is nice. And then here, this is actually a very nice example because we see right away that for most groups, there's kind of a clear upward trend, but we see here one group, group 4, they go from 50% to 10.5%. So this for us would be then a reason to look into this, to see, okay, what's happening here? Because of course, happiness depends on many different things. It's not just this program. It could be just, you know, a very bad a week of heavy rains, for example, that has caused damage to your house, or it could be a domestic issue, or it could be prices that went up, or whatever. It could be many different things. So it doesn't have to be us. But this allows us to spot right away, okay, this is group 4, what's happening in group 4. The last thing I'm going to show is for our kind of how we use it for analysis as well. What we see here now is that each line, as I said, is a different group. So this is group 5, for example. We see here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moments in time where we've asked the happiness question for group 5. But all of these groups, of course, they start at different points in time. This is a new group in Rwanda that started in July, for example, and this is an early group that started in March. But sometimes, or often actually, what we're interested in is to really see the change across time, independently of when the group has started. So to just really see what happens in the first 5 months, what happens in the first 12 months. And therefore, we have the option here to visualize this on a so-called normalized timeline, where this is now the first month of the program, and this is the end of the program, basically. So we can really see how things shift across time, irrespective of when these groups have started in real time, in actual time, so to speak. Again, we can select groups here, and you can do all kinds of stuff here. We have an admin section where we can kind of see which groups have been collected, and how many interviews there are for each group and for each round. So this is more of pulling data from the data hub that Yvonne and me are using to monitor the whole process. I hope this has given you a bit of an idea of how we're using the dashboard to inform our operations. And then of course this dashboard also is available to the local country teams, which is really important, so that they can really see, you know, something is happening in this group, we need to follow up. Also generally we use this, as Yvonne has said, to test our theory of change, to see, is it true that we assume, like, certain assumptions that we make, are they actually true? And if they're not, is there anything we can do about it? So really to keep ourselves on the toes and to remain essentially very data driven in what we do, without, you know, having to spend a third of our budget on data gathering, because we're not a survey company, we're an NGO. And using these Nebu products really allows us to find that balance, to use our data to get better at what we're doing. This is pretty much what I wanted to cover, I think. I don't know if there are any additional questions on anything that I've been talking about, or anything that Yvonne has been talking about. I can't see the chat window at the moment.
Yeah, I have a few questions. First, mine. I was wondering, you're saying you're trying to be data-driven, you have the dashboard. Was there something that really came as a result of analyzing data, seeing the visual representation of the collected data that sort of shocked you about the whole project?
So as I said, we just started using this dashboard really in everyday operations. So in that sense, we're just starting to. I mean, we had a pretty good idea of what's going on per group and also per sets of groups and per country, but this is now the first time that we really have the overall complete picture. So we're really in that process of figuring things out. I mean, there are certainly things that kind of we already see that either confirm or don't confirm our expectations. One of the things is that very clearly debts are going down. So one of the things that people are doing they're paying off debts. We knew this, but this is actually happening on a slightly larger scale than we had initially thought, which is a good thing because having debt, you could think that paying off debt is that a productive way of spending your money? Is that going to keep you out of poverty sustainably? But it does, because having debt in these contexts is much more about having debt as it would be in a European context. It has a lot to do with social status. So being able to be debt-free actually means that you are able to move much more freely through the community. Your general kind of level of respect is higher. You get more opportunities. It opens up doors to not be indebted anymore. That's one of the things. Another thing about illness, for example, we have a question about whether you've been ill in the last 7 days. And as part of our theory of change, we expect that people get more resilient, they get healthier, they eat better, and therefore they're less ill. But then if we look at the illness data, we actually see that it's kind of all over the place for most groups. Because what we're asking is, have you been ill in the last 7 days? That's a question. We're not using a longer reference period because people can't remember. 7 days is kind of what works in terms of measuring, in terms of validity of measurement. But as it turns out, and it's not super surprising if you think about it, many different things influence whether you've been sick the last 7 days, especially in those environments. This has a lot to do with seasonality, the weather. It has to do with the kinds of foods that are available. So in the looking at kind of have you been sick in the last 7 days, we don't see a massive impact at the moment of the program because you can get a cold, which doesn't really depend on your income situation. So here, I guess we're kind of it's good because we've kind of pulled back to the ground and kind of realized like, okay, yeah, all right, this makes sense. Like, we shouldn't expect to this intervention to affect every single kind of domain of their lives in exactly the same way that we expect. But in general, also when we look at school enrollment, for example, we see really positive changes there. Children are going back to school, not because we tell them to, but because that's what they do. They are very aware of the value of education, and once you give them kind of the financial space to not having to keep their children at home, children will go to school. And that's not just because of the school fees that they sometimes have to pay, but also if you're just struggling to get along every day, then you need your child to help out. I mean, that's what it is. You don't really have a choice. But if you take that pressure away, people end up in school again. And again, not because we kind of preach to them that that's what needs to happen. They know they don't need us to tell them, how to get out of poverty. They just need the opportunity and kind of the support to do this. Extreme poverty is an enormously stressful state to be in. It's so much more than just not having money. It's really having no capacity, no mental capacity, no cognitive space to even think about the future. It's
That's
so
also
focused on the short term. It's so focused on just survival, basically.
True.
That's
That
really more than just not having
to striving. I have another question, more data related. Is the data transferred to Tableau an automated process, or is there manual intervention required?
Very good. Don't know who asked this question, but thank you very much for this question, because these are all things that I skipped for the sake of brevity, but thanks for giving me an excuse to talk about this. So the way this works at the moment is it's not automated. Well, no, it's not automated in the sense that it is scheduled. At the moment, it's still the case that I open Tableau on my laptop, and once I open the Tableau project, it updates the data, and then I publish the Tableau dashboard again into our Tableau environment, which is kind of a 1-minute activity that I need to do. That's how things are at the moment, but that is the case because there's actually another step that I skipped now, but that we're working on in that little error where it says API. There will actually be an in-between step, an SQL database that we're now building, where the Nebu API feeds the data in, and then the Tableau dashboard actually gets it from there, and then it's going to be a live connection. But for now, it's it's not completely live, but every couple of days or something, I work on the dashboard anyway, and then it updates it, and then it's kind of quasi live. But really good question. Yeah, and it's and to add to that, it's possible, right? It's not that it's technically not possible to have a live connection. It's just that's how we've organized it for now.
It seems relatively easy. Did it take a lot to establish that data connection?
Oh, that took, I think, at least 60 seconds. No, I mean, once the R script does what it's supposed to do, it's a matter of, I mean, it's one function in the data hub to kind of take that the data frame, the R data frame, and push it to the API. And then, yeah, as you said, we use an OData connection, and Tableau is very easy in basically understanding and feeding on all kinds of data connections. So then, yeah, it's a matter of just opening that URL in Tableau. So the actual making the connection between the two really is a click of a button.
Thank you. Feel free to ask questions. In the meantime, I would like to ask you how we can support you. Is it that you're looking for organizations, or private people can also make a donation? How we can approach it?
Yvonne, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I don't have a concrete answer to that. You can support us in many ways.
We haven't mentioned our website yet. We should do that. How about that?
Yeah, our website.
Well, we can also prepare for the follow-up emails that I will send to attendees. We can also prepare a little bit information about details, but maybe let's keep it high level. How, what are the options for our attendees?
Yes.
I mean, there's always of course, it's most of it is financed by individual donors. There's also institutional support, especially for the data part and the data gathering part. That's mostly financed through institutions like foundations. But the actual money that ends up with the women, most of it is individual donors, and most of it in the Netherlands. So of course, spread the word, and look at the website and see if this speaks to you, and whether you think this is a cause worth supporting. Yeah. That's kind of on an individual level. On an organizational level, I would say if you see any room or potential for a partnership, for collaboration, for bringing in new ideas, drop us an email and and let us talk.
Okay. And the website's 100weeks.nl, right?
.nl or .org.
Yes. Okay. Okay, I think this is it. We don't have any more questions. Thank you also. We got a few messages saying that it's very informative and people enjoy the good work you're doing.